What's up, y'all? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to episode 31 of The Attachment Confessions. It's your girl, Chelsea, here, and as per usual, I am so grateful that out of all the podcasts you could be listening to right now, you landed here with me. And just in case you're new to The Attachment Confessions, let me fill you in on what the pod is all about. From the moment I discovered attachment science, everything about every relationship I had ever been in finally made sense. And now I'm figuring out what it takes to earn my attachment security and have the best possible relationships from now on. Here on the Attachment Confessions, we'll be diving into all things attachment science while you guys tag along on my attachment healing adventure. My hope is that by bringing attachment science to those of you who have never heard of it before, and by sharing my own story, you'll also be inspired to set out on your own attachment healing journey. Here's the thing. Attachment is learned. So if you have an insecure attachment, it can be unlearned. Healing from your past and learning how to love and be loved in a healthy way is 100% possible. So, if having the best relationships of your life is your goal, just like it is mine, you're in the right place. Alrighty, before I introduce you guys to today's amazing guest, let's go over a few quick housekeeping items. First, if you're loving the Attachment Confessions, if you could please take a quick minute to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It really makes a huge difference getting this podcast in front of more people. Second thing, my free attachment conversation guide for couples is available and I'd love to get it in your inbox. So reach out to me on my Instagram at The Attachment Confessions or shoot me an email at chelsea@theattachmentconfessions.com and I'll get the guide sent your way. And lastly, all Attachment Confessions listeners get 10% off of my go-to attachment expert, Dr. Sarah Hensley's attachment healing programs and services. Check out everything she has to offer at drsarahhensley.com. The word doctor spelled out. Use code Chelsea10 at checkout to get 10% off. The link is waiting for you in the show notes. Y'all, somehow it is still 100 degrees in Oklahoma, and I am not okay. But despite the summer heat refusing to take a hint, our summer guest series is officially wrapping up. And we're going out with one of the most powerful conversations this podcast has ever had. If you've missed any of our summer guest episodes, do yourself a favor and go back and check them out. They have been so good. But today, well, today is something else entirely. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This one is heavy. It hits super close to home for me personally, and I have a feeling it's going to hit close to home for a lot of you too. Covert narcissism is one of the most searched relationship topics on the internet, and for good reason. Far too many people have lived it. And if you're one of them, what you're about to hear is going to make you feel seen, heard, and understood in a way you maybe never have before. Mia Hanks spent nearly 30 years married to a covert narcissist. She survived it. She escaped it. And then she wrote about it in an award-winning memoir that is changing lives. This is her story, and I am so honored that she trusted the Attachment Confessions with it.
All right. Welcome, Mia. Thank you so much for joining the Attachment Confessions today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Just a little bit of backstory. I actually heard you on a different podcast, and I was so horrified by your story and your experience and what you went through, while simultaneously being inspired by your story and how you've come out on the other side of extremely toxic and narcissistic abusive marriage. And I've shared on my podcast before a little bit about a covert narcissist relationship that I was in for a decade. And whenever I listened to that podcast that you were on, I seriously cried in different parts of listening to your story because I have never been able to quite put into words what it feels like and what I went through for somebody who's never experienced it to actually be able to truly grasp or understand what it's like. And it was almost like you had ripped open my heart and my mind and took the words right out of me and actually formulated them into describing what you went through. And I related on a level that I've never been able to describe before. And so thank you so much, first of all, for being so brave and sharing your story with the world, but also being able to describe it in a way that I feel like is really hard for people that have gone through an emotionally abusive relationship with a covert narcissist. So I just wanted to
Uh,
share that with you first and
yeah,
foremost of how moving your story was for me.
I think it's interesting. You said you were with a covert narcissist, and I mean, so many people I've talked to, it's so uncanny how all of them seem to use the same playbook. It's sort of like you hear one person's story, you kind of have heard them all. Like it's the same type of behavior. It's so interesting to talk to another person who's been through it because it's like you must have been living in my house. I mean, it's amazing how we all as victims, survivors can understand each other. And it's just so strange to me that our experiences are all so similar.
Yeah, and the details of your relationship, they're very different from the relationship that I was in, but
Mm.
the patterns, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the narcissistic patterns are all just so the same, so textbook the same that yeah, it's wild. But before we get into the marriage, do you mind sharing with us who Mia was? What was your life like? What did you believe about love and relationships? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I came from a very sheltered background. I was very naive. I didn't have any trauma in my life. It was a very idyllic childhood. I didn't deal with toxic people. Those kind of people weren't my life. And so I think I came into my college years from a very naive place. And that's where I met my now ex-husband. I was very young when I met him. I was 19 and I got married when I was 21. So we dated for 2 years. And I think I just thought the world was pretty good. I didn't think that people had ill intentions, and I just wasn't looking out for red flags in relationships. I thought when I met him that he was great and he was kind and he never had any ill intentions. I just didn't believe that that could be the case. So yeah, I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Did you have much relationship experience prior to that?
I had in high school, but again, I just didn't have experience with these kind of toxic personality disordered people. And so I just thought if he looked good, I mean, if he seemed like he was a good person, he was doing all of this love bombing and I thought, I thought he was true to his word. Again, just having never dealt with that level of toxic before. So, yeah, I think I just didn't have a lot of experience with a lot of different personality types and certainly nothing that flawed. And so I didn't know that I needed to be on the lookout for these things.
Yeah, and that's the scary part. I feel like especially whenever you're 19 and you're naive and you have kind of gone through life with rose-colored glasses on, haven't really
Yeah.
experienced anything traumatic, thankfully,
Mhm.
obviously.
Yeah.
But then you don't know what you don't know. So what was he like when you first met? What made you fall for him in those early days?
I think the thing that made me fall for him, those things were actually red flags and I didn't know it. It was just this over the top attention and the grand gestures, the gifts, the amazing dates, and I'm thinking, he's really in love with me. and and I guess anybody in my position would think the same. And so he seemed like he was just all about me, and he was so over the top and so invested. And so I thought, well, how could this be a bad thing? This seems like this is a great guy and he really thinks a lot of me, and what could be wrong with this, But it was that love bombing that really it was a red flag. And one story I tell in my book is before we were officially dating, he actually went in to like the registrar's office at our university and somehow obtained my social security number so that he could get my class schedule. And he actually got a copy of my class schedule so that he could see, basically my walking routes where I would be walking on certain days so that he could just randomly, seemingly bump into me. And I thought, that's strange because, I've never really seen him on campus before. And then all of a sudden he's everywhere. And I later found out that, yeah, he had gotten my schedule. And at the time, it was funny. I thought that was funny. Wow, look at the effort he went to try to bump into me. But really, that's like creepy. At the time, I didn't realize that was creepy. I thought, wow, he really wants to see me. Of course, now I know better. Now I think most people would say, whoa, that's a red flag. But, way back 30 plus years ago, we weren't having these conversations. And so I didn't know enough to know that that was a red flag.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're like, oh, so romantic. He really likes me. And now looking back, you're like, he was stalking me. Cool.
That's called stalking. Right. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So, for listeners who might not be familiar, narcissistic personality disorder, that's a totally different beast from someone who just has, tinges of narcissism here and there. And there's different types of narcissists as well. So, for listeners who might not be familiar with what all narcissism can entail and the different types, what specifically is a covert narcissist? And how is that different from the more obvious kind?
Well, I think I've read where covert narcissists are considered one of the most dangerous types. The reason is because to the outside world, they look like great people, kind, generous, humble, empathetic, just all around great people. Behind closed doors, it's a completely different story. They're abusive, they're manipulative, they're controlling. And the reason that it is so dangerous is that everybody else sees them as this, my ex-husband looked like this great guy to all of our friends. And it really makes it hard for anybody to believe the victim, because they say, no, he's great. He's so kind and wonderful. But all their abuse is kind of done behind closed doors. And so they are very covert, just very, very covert in nature.
Mhm. What was it that made his narcissism so hard to pinpoint for you?
What made it hard to pinpoint was the fact that I didn't know what narcissism was. Had I seen the 9 traits on the DSM earlier, I think it would have been clear to me earlier who I was dealing with. My ex-husband really checks off at least 8 of those traits, maybe 9. He is a full blown textbook narcissist. And so, had I known what to look for, I would have been like, oh, yeah, he's totally a narcissist. But he was really good at basically what's called breadcrumbing. So basically, they can push you just as far as they can, be as abusive and controlling and horrible. And then when they think they've pushed you too far, they can reel you back in with maybe one kind gesture, maybe a nice dinner, maybe a gift. And then you think, well, I don't know. I mean, this was a nice gesture. Maybe he's not that bad. Maybe I was just overblowing this in my mind. And then they start abusing again. And then, maybe another kind gesture thrown in there. So I think that you start to question your reality.
Yeah, that intermittent reinforcement. You're getting all this awful treatment followed by, gestures of love bombing again to try to
Yeah.
reel you back in and create that cycle all over again. When did you first start to notice signs that something was really off?
I think really early in the marriage, I was absolutely seeing that my husband had possessed no empathy. He could not sympathize or empathize with anyone. A good example would be if I was ever sick, rather than being sympathetic toward me or trying to help, his reaction every single time would be to be angry with me. He was literally mad at me because I was sick. And the reason, and I didn't understand it at the time, I thought, this is weird. The reason I learned later is that narcissists do not like to be inconvenienced. And it was inconvenient to him if I was sick. But at the time, I thought, this just does not seem right. Like, who gets mad at someone because they're sick? And I think, it was a red flag. I didn't see it as such. I just thought, well, it's just a personality quirk. He's a little off, he's a little quirky. I swept it under the rug and, that's basically what I did with all these little things I would see. I just thought, well, it's just a personality quirk and, these things will get better in time. They don't get better in time, they get worse. But I didn't understand that when I was 21 years old.
Yeah. And another thing with narcissists, not only do they not like to be inconvenienced, but they don't like for the attention to be taken off of them, right? So if you're going through something where you need some extra care or something as simple as being sick, but it's almost like to them, it's like, well, wait a second, I'm the one that deserves to have the attention.
Right, right. It is interesting, and I can very much say that the times in our marriage when he was sick, it was a completely different story, right? I mean, how dare I not give him all my attention? If he had a cold, it was like the whole world has to come to a screeching halt, because it's just so important that he needs care. But as far as anybody else needing any kind of care, no, he doesn't have time for that. He doesn't deserve that kind of inconvenience, and that's just how we rolled. And like I say, I was 21 and didn't know any better really and just thought it'll get better, but it
Right.
did.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole everything has to be about them pathology that they have.
Yeah.
What were some other red flags that you experienced?
The whole level of the control and the manipulation and things that I didn't understand were controlling. It was blurring the lines between, I want to take care of you, I want to keep you safe, whatever. Um, I think I was seeing it as that when it really was, I want to control you. I want to control every minute of your day. And
Yeah.
so I think I was being controlled from day one and I just did not know it. I wrote it off as he really cares about me. You know, he really didn't, but he just needed to have that level of control over me.
What did a typical day or week in your marriage actually feel like? Paint the picture for us.
Obviously every day was something new. But for the most part, I mean, as far as what I was feeling, I was feeling trapped. I was feeling like I was not free. It felt like a hostage situation a lot of the time. It was a lot of walking on eggshells, rehearsing what I might say to him, figuring out what would trigger him and what wouldn't. This got really challenging when we had two children and I'm raising kids effectively by myself and trying to keep everything calm, cool, and collected so that he doesn't, have some meltdown temper tantrum. And so it was just a lot of pressure on me. It was sort of my goal each day was just really to survive to the next day. Can I just make it through this day? Keep everything at bay and make it to tomorrow. And it was just a tremendous amount of stress all the time. One little thing that didn't go his way or something that inconvenienced him could could trigger him, and then it could be 3 days of silent treatment or he could have, a meltdown and start throwing things. You never knew. And you never knew what could set him off. So it was just a lot of tension.
What you just described to a T, I can relate to. Oh my gosh, feeling like you're living in a hostage situation and walking on eggshells. And if I say one thing in a way that he's not going to like or do one thing or try to stand up for myself in any way, shape, or form, it is on,
It
right?
is.
You're going to
Yeah.
wish that you never even thought about
Yeah.
saying
Exactly.
something to rock the boat or oh my gosh, yeah. The thing with the relationship that I was in with a covert narcissist, he would not stonewall me. He would berate me for
Yes.
hours upon hours upon hours. I mean, we would get in a 10-hour long fight where he is just berating me, beating a dead horse, like insisting that I see things the way that he wants me to see things.
You just give up at some point and just start agreeing to,
Yeah.
just to make this conversation be over. It's yeah,
And
yeah.
so many times the only way that the conversation would end is because it is now 8 o'clock the following morning and I have to leave and go to work and look like a complete zombie, having had zero sleep, looking
Mhm.
just like an absolute mess. So I was just basically in survival mode 24/7. So yeah,
Yeah.
that feeling trapped, feeling like you're in a hostage situation, really having to monitor your every move, every word, that totally resonates. Ugh.
And then what would be, the other piece of that is then my ex-husband is very, very wealthy. And so, on the flip side, then I'm feeling that way, but then he's coming at me saying, "You're so lucky that you're married to me. You know, you should be so lucky. Look what you have. Look at this house you live in. Look what you drive. Look, you have everything you want, material possessions that you want." And it's sort of like, well, I mean, he's not wrong, right? I do have everything I want. I do live in this amazing house, and I, from the outside, have this amazing life. And so then you start thinking, well, maybe I should be more grateful,
Mm,
and then you think, but I'm miserable.
mm.
And I don't want this. I don't want that. I would give up all of this just to have some peace. So there was just this dichotomy, that he kept me confused all the time.
Yep. I mean, that is gaslighting 101. Covert narcissists are masters of making their partner feel like they're the problem, you know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
how did that show up in your marriage? How long did it take for you to realize the narrative that you've been given about yourself by him and that just was not true?
I mean, it really took probably about 28 years. It really wasn't until probably the last year of the marriage that I started saying, something's just not right here. I really did believe I was the problem. After that many years of being gaslit, you just accept it, and that's what I did. So it really was at the very end where things were just the level of control. His need for control was so extreme and over the top. It was getting so much worse as he aged. The control was getting, just it was unsurvivable. And that's when I really started doing a deep dive and doing some research into what's going on here. And when I discovered narcissism and started reading about it, it was like, this answers all my questions. My whole life makes sense now. And I only wish I would have come across it, 20 plus years earlier. But yeah,
Yes.
it took me having to do that research and understand narcissistic personality disorder before I could put those pieces together.
Yeah, because that's the scary part is it starts out so gradually, you almost don't even notice that anything is happening until you fast forward for you 3 decades almost, and then you can look back and you're just like, "What in the world have I been actually putting up with? This
Yeah.
is insane."
It really is, and then when you realize it and you put those pieces together, then I went through a period where I was angry with myself. Like, how could I how did I put up with this? How did I let this escalate to the level that it is? Because the more the narcissist gets away with, the more they'll do. They'll step up their game.
Mhm.
So I say to myself, why didn't I see this sooner? Why didn't I get out sooner? And I think that's a whole that's just a whole thing where you've got to take some time to really, forgive yourself. But I was angry with myself for quite some time.
It's definitely one of those things where the gaslighting that takes place over that amount of time that you're with somebody like this really erodes your own sense of self, your own sense of trust in yourself. And I feel like that is such a big piece of why people stay longer than they ever thought that they would. Hindsight is always 2020, but looking back, you beat yourself up. I know I did. I was like, why did I waste so much time? Um, so was there a specific moment, like a thing that he said or something that happened and made you say, "I have got to get out"?
Definitely, yeah. I think we were in marriage counseling the last, I don't know, month or so. And it was funny because he is the one who suggested going to marriage counseling. Narcissists love therapy, if you didn't know that. They see it as a way to basically manipulate the therapist to get what they want. And so I think that one of those points came that like kind of a defining moment in this whole relationship when after about 10 sessions of marriage counseling, our therapist kicked my ex-husband out of therapy and said, I can't help you. And she had been observing him, over 10 weeks and these sessions. And I guess she was just sort of, trying to assess the dynamics between us. And on about that 10th session, she literally kicked him out. She's mid session. She said, I can't make you understand that you can't self reflect. You can't self reflect. You can't see things through other people's eyes. You can't put yourself in other people's shoes. And therefore, she said, there's nothing I can say that's going to help you. And she literally wished him well and told him not to come back. And the funny thing was, you would think that he would be angry because narcissists don't like to be discarded or told no. And the interesting thing is, when we left that day, and we weren't even speaking at this point, but when we left, he really wasn't, he was very cordial and shook her hand and thanked her for all the help and left. And I thought, how strange. Why isn't he irate? Well, the reason is because the way he heard what she was saying was, he's so perfect that, he can't be helped. He doesn't need help. That's how he saw it.
Oh my
Well, I
gosh.
guess I just, she can't help me because there's just nothing to help because I don't need help. And he left with his head held high that day. And I thought to myself, I don't think he's understanding what she's saying. I mean, she's basically saying you are a flawed person and you can't be fixed. Um, and he saw that as, I am so wonderful. I am so amazing that I just don't need to be counseled anymore. Really bizarre. Really, really bizarre. Now that I look back, and I was just thinking, wow, how strange. Because anybody else would be, I mean, that's embarrassing to be kicked out of therapy.
Mhm.
Um, not something you see every day. But he didn't. He
Yeah.
was not at all embarrassed. In fact, he, like I say, he had his head held high. He thought that he'd really done something great.
Oh my gosh.
Because
Yeah, and I mean, good for her. Like, thank God for that therapist because you're right. It's so easy for a narcissist to totally bamboozle a therapist for an hour a week or every 2 weeks, right? Because they
yeah, yeah,
are so good with words. They are so charming. And that's the thing that makes true narcissistic personality disorder so hard to actually detect for anybody outside of that really close relationship, your
yeah.
marriage, my 10-year relationship, is because they are so good at putting on that mask for an hour and charming the socks off of the therapist. And the therapist is just like, oh, this guy's great. You know what I mean? So good on her that she had that BS detector.
Because that's so easy to I mean, most therapists are not going to be in tune to that, sadly, and that was just pure luck, and he had chosen a therapist, that's the funny thing. I had nothing to do with it, I was just along for the ride. So, yeah, it was his, it was his choice, and, it backfired on him. He just didn't realize it at the time. But
Wow.
really what that did is it gave me validation to say, wow, this is a professional who just basically said, this guy is not fixable. I mean, if this is a toxic relationship and it cannot be fixed. And I later met with her in private. I couldn't let him know. I drove I remember sitting in a Walmart parking lot and I Zoomed with her from my phone and from my car. And, I asked her these questions. I said, been doing this reading and I feel like he's a narcissist. And she did not disagree, even though she, couldn't formally diagnose him. But I really felt like that gave me the validation I needed. An outsider, a professional saying, you need to get out of there. Like, this is not safe. And that was the moment I think that I definitively decided that I've got to leave and I cannot go back.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Because I know that you had mentioned in a previous discussion of ours that nobody else in your life believed that he was this monster that when you started to share with people, like, hey, this is actually what's going on, to everybody
Yeah,
else who thought that y'all had the perfect relationship, the perfect life, he was the perfect
yeah.
husband. You did not get that same validation from them because they didn't see it. So,
No, they absolutely did not. And then after I left, he launched this whole smear campaign, which is typical of what narcissists do. And I don't know what kind of story he was telling, but I can say that all of our mutual friends that we had during the marriage, there's not a single person today that speaks to me. So I don't know what kind of narrative he's given, but with the narcissist, it's all about protecting their image. And when I left, that was his first concern was, "Oh my goodness, what's this gonna do to my image? How are people going to see me?" And so he's out there trying to paint this wonderful picture of himself and how he's been discarded and he's been the one who's been abused. She walked out on me. Can you believe it? She abandoned me, and garnering all this sympathy. And I guess no one really considered, wonder what would make her want to walk away. People don't ask those questions. They just listen to the supposed victim, right? And say, oh, I'm so sorry, your wife left you. I feel so sorry for you. Um, it's all very, very sickening, but there's nothing you can do about it.
but I'm still just, that breaks my heart for you. And I'm so sorry that basically every single person in your life didn't even give you any sort of opportunity to tell your side and they just automatically sided with him. Because
Yeah,
it's not just, the marriage and the life, the future that you thought that you were gonna have with this person when you initially said "I do" 29 years prior and had
yes,
children with them and built this life, but then it's also all these other people that you no longer have as a support system or people to be in relationship with. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
devastating.
it really and it was very painful, and I can remember talking, to other people about the situation, and of course, everybody wants to say, "Well, if that's how they are, then they weren't good friends anyway." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, but it still hurts, it
Of
still hurts."
course, 2
And
things can be true at the same time. That
exactly.
does not dismiss your experience of having everybody in your life side with a
Yeah.
monster. So,
Yeah, exactly, and then it's sort of like you want to my first reaction is, well, I want to talk to these people. I want to tell these people what really happened. But then I really had to stop myself and say, no, it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. If they are going to believe him, let them believe him and go on. So I will say, I never did approach any of those people and say, okay, now you need to listen to my side of the story, because I thought,
mhm.
I know what my side of the story is. I know what happened. I know what's real and what's not. And I don't think I need to go out and convince people, that I'm right. I know what happened, and I know he lied about it, and it is what it is. So I just let it go.
Yeah. Well, and you never know how that could probably fan the flame even further of his
It
smear
was.
campaign and retaliation towards you and put you in danger, you know?
It really wasn't worth it. Like you say, it could have just started another whole conflict that, we'd had enough conflict through the divorce. I just wasn't really looking to create more conflict or more problems with him. I wanted him to just, leave me alone, basically. And so I think I made the right choice by letting those people go and not trying to, hey, come listen to me now. And it is interesting. I read something about how when you leave a narcissist, how they never leave you alone. And I thought, oh, that can't be true. Even though they may move on and find new relationships, I believe my ex-husband will be angry and vindictive with me for the rest of his life. Because it's just like, narcissists, they cannot accept defeat. They cannot accept someone leaving them or being discarded. I think they never get over it. That's, something to always keep in mind. He's he's always, who would like to get revenge on me if he could. Divorcing a narcissist is not like divorcing a neurotypical person.
Right. And even divorcing a neurotypical person can come with its own set of retaliation and consequences and bad blood, right? So just
Yeah.
imagine how much more that's turned up for somebody with narcissistic personality disorder.
To this day, we are absolutely no contact. And that's, that feels like the healthiest thing to do. His anger is still, I think at a 10. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me with his new relationship, a new relationship that he got into, they ended up
Yes.
moving across the street from you.
He absolutely did. Yes. Um, I know that sounds crazy. Most people probably would not believe me, but I am completely serious. He got engaged. He's actually married now, and after he got engaged, he and his fiance bought a home across the street from me, literally across the street, like not down the street, not in the same neighborhood, but across the street. Um, and I think he did that for two reasons. One, I think it was intimidation. I think he thought this was a great way for me to let her know that I'm always watching. And the other reason I think he did it was he wants to show off his new life. Here's my new wife, and here's all this, glamour and all these gifts I'm going to shower her with. I mean, like he thinks I'm going to be envious, I think. He has no he has no idea. But yeah, it is true. He moved across the street, and I still have that home, but I ended up effectively moving back to my hometown, states away, and I spend most of my time now there. So I don't spend a lot of time across the street from him, but I do a little bit. I still have one of my children that lives in the same town. So yeah, but it is the audacity of that, right? It's crazy.
That is mind blowing. And I'm assuming that this new wife has no idea that you're the person that's across the street.
Oh, she does know I live across the street. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, maybe they're made for each other. I don't
I
know.
That's exactly, yeah, yeah. No, she's very much aware that they moved across the street from me. I'm not sure what her feeling about that is, but yeah, I think they are kind of two peas in a pod. So good luck to
Wow.
them.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. So, okay, when you did decide, okay, this is it, I'm leaving, I got the validation and the clarity that I needed from not only finally being able to trust myself, but having the therapist confirm all of the things that I've been thinking and feeling over the last 3 decades. What did leaving actually look like? What was the hardest part of going through with it?
The hardest part was just the fear. I didn't know how he was going to react. And so basically what I did is I told him I needed to take some time for myself. I needed a mental break. I really wasn't doing well mentally, and I just needed some time. And so I told him I was going to go stay with my parents for a little while. He just blew it off and thought, oh, she's just being ridiculous and, this and that. But really, when I went to my parents' house, I knew I was never coming back. I did not let him know that. So, yeah, I just, days turned to weeks, turned to months. And then my parents helped me and I got my own apartment. Still not telling him that I was permanently gone. Told him I was going to take some time to be on my own. And then, ultimately I said, I'm not coming back. But he was, it was interesting. He started out being trying to be kind of nice, kind of nice. He wanted me to come back and he's making all these promises and, how wonderful things would be if I came back. Um, and I kept refusing. I kept saying, I just, no, I need more time. I kept just kind of buying more time. But my favorite quote from him, and a direct quote from him during that time, he called me one day. I was staying with my parents at this point, and he said to me, you need to come back because this is not working for me. And I thought, there you go. I mean, you just called yourself a narcissist. It was all about him. This isn't working for me. You need to come back. And I
Oh
thought, well,
gosh.
it's working for me. It's working really well for me, actually.
For once
Uh,
in my life.
for once,
Yes.
for the first time ever. And so, yeah, it took me a while to file those divorce papers. I was in therapy for a year. Basically, I was, living apart from him for a year, and then I finally told him I need to I like my life now and I can't go back. And
Yeah.
so from the day that I filed the divorce papers, we never spoke again. So that was probably a good thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's the thing that whenever people are like, Chelsea, I cannot believe that you stayed for as long as you did. And I'm sure that when you tell people your story now, they feel the same way. They can't believe it. Because I very much am the type of person that I feel like I'm very sure of myself and I'm a very confident person. And I know that I have, so much self worth. And I don't just like
Yes.
put up with crap from people, that's like the reputation I've always had. And so when people are like, "I cannot believe that you stayed for 10 years." I mean, it's just so hard to actually describe to people what it's like living in that world. And when you
Yeah.
finally kind of like have it up to here, and then they do a total 180 and they're like, I'm so sorry. You're right. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I will start doing this. I will start doing that, and making you all of these false promises to make
Yes.
you go, "Oh, okay, maybe I am just overreacting. Maybe I am just only focusing on the negative instead of, all the positive things." And, that's how they get you, right? And but then
Yeah.
when you get to the point where you're like, this tactic that you've been using over and over and over again to get me to stay and to not get me to leave is just not going to work anymore. Like, you've used all of your chances
Yeah.
and I'm done, then they realize, "Oh, wait, she actually isn't gonna fall for this again. What?"
Yeah.
And then the rage
In the
happens for
rage.
them, and then they show you their true colors again
Right.
because they're like, "My scheme isn't working anymore. What the heck?"
Yeah. During that year that I was in therapy, there was a moment where I thought, maybe it's just easier if I go back. I didn't want to, but I just thought maybe it would just make things easier. And I told my therapist, I said, I don't know. I mean, do you think I should just go back? Am I just being, am I just creating too many problems by leaving? And she told me, she said, here's the deal. She said, if you go back, you can be assured that life will probably be pretty great for 2 weeks. And she said, after those 2 weeks, she said, I can just about guarantee you things will be orders of magnitude worse than they ever were before you left. Because he's going to be nice for those 2 weeks to make sure that you are hooked, hooked in, you're going to stay. And then he's going to be angry because you left, and you're going to have to deal with, who knows, this anger for however long you're going to have to deal with. You left me, and you have to pay for it. And then she
Yeah.
said, the other thing is, once you go back to a narcissist, they've won. And so then they think, well, I got you to come back once. I can get you back. I can get you back anytime I want. And she said, and statistically, the abuse ramps up.
Yes.
And that really scared me, and I thought, "Okay, I believe you." I can totally see him doing that. And so fortunately, I did not go back, but, I think that a lot of people that do end up being guilted into returning back into one of those relationships. I mean, sadly, I would say most of those people probably don't get out again.
I know. That's so sad.
It is.
Ugh. For you, what was the hardest part of life after leaving? Not necessarily like the practical stuff, because obviously you've shared that you had the big house, the fancy cars, all that material stuff. But what was it about the internal stuff? Who were you without him after 29 years?
I think I didn't know, and I didn't know who I was. My identity had been obliterated. But I think the hardest part for me after leaving and like starting to do life on my own, first of all, I had never been on my own. I went from college straight to being married. So I had literally never lived alone ever. So that was kind of scary. But the hardest part was just learning to trust myself. He had told me for so many years, you're not smart, you're not capable, you can't do anything right. And so I just didn't know. I was so worried every decision I made. I would think, is this right? What if I make a mistake? And I think that was the hardest thing. I had to learn to trust myself that I was capable, and that it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, so what if I make a wrong decision? The world is not going to stop spinning because of that. And narcissists, some like my ex husband, can be very black and white thinkers. It's either all great or it's all horrible and it's a catastrophe. And I had to learn that there's some in between. I mean, there's room for error. And it took me a long time to just really understand that. And that was the hardest part.
Yeah, that erosion of self-trust is so real,
Yeah.
and you basically just become a shell of a person, a shell of
Yeah.
yourself. Like, there is no light in your eyes. You just lose yourself in this world of uh, manipulation and gaslighting, to where you gaslight yourself, right?
Oh,
You just
yes, I did,
so
and I did that to myself. I think I did that all the time. So that was really, really, really hard for me. But eventually, I started learning, like I say, that it's okay to make mistakes. Not everything has to be perfect all the time. And once I started to realize that, I think my anxiety started to lower, and I really started to find peace. And that's what I had been searching for so long. I was so craving peace. I can remember, this extravagant lifestyle that we led, thinking I would give all of this up. I would give up the home behind the gates and all of this if I could just have some peace. And that peace did come when I started to learn that, I could trust myself.
yes. Oh my gosh, yes. What has healing actually looked like? Like, what tools or practices or people in your life have been the most transformative for you?
I think definitely having that support system. I've had my parents and then my closest friend. Those people have been the ones that have kind of carried me through all of this. And having that support system, having people you can talk to, I think sometimes talking is underrated. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just to be able to talk to somebody and just have them listen to you, not try to fix what's wrong or not try to perform any kind of miracle, but just to listen and make you feel validated. I think that's been a huge part of my healing process. And really just giving myself that grace to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to figure this out. And it's a whole new world and it's scary, but it's exciting. And just really embracing that freedom.
Mhm.
It's, I've said many times, I love that I can wake up in the morning and decide how I want to spend my day. That is just something I will never take for granted. It's so cool to be able to wake up and say, I can do whatever I want today. This is my life. That is so exciting to me.
That is
Really is.
so relatable, Mia, because I now like Saturday mornings, early afternoons are like my favorite time of the week because I
Yes,
get to just go out and run errands. And
yes.
that sounds so lame,
It
but
sounds so
it
so
sounds
mundane,
it
but yes,
does, but I'm like, I can go wherever I want, whenever
yes,
I want, for however long I want, and, like, that sounds so lame, but it is, like, the type of freedom that I did not have for so long, like, to even be able to go and run errands when I wanted to. You know what
yes,
I mean?
yeah.
Like, let alone other really huge things that I didn't feel like I had the freedom to be able to do. So, I totally relate to that. Oh my
It's those
gosh.
little things, that to me are just so exciting. And
Yes.
anybody else would think, "Are you crazy?" It really is, and I think it's made me appreciate what's really important. I don't think that I could see it that clearly back when I was married, but now I'm realizing what's important and what's not. And I think it's just given me a whole new outlook on life, really. And I think
Yes.
I feel like maybe I'm able to enjoy life more than maybe just the average person because having been through this,
Mhm.
I'm able to appreciate those little things.
Yes, I totally get that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I want to pivot and talk about how you have now turned your pain into a memoir. So, at what point did you decide I'm going to write about what I went through? What made you want to put your story on paper and share it with the world?
Yeah, it was kind of a scary, endeavor, but I really felt like having a firsthand account, for other people out there to be able to read a firsthand account and really understand this stuff and see what it is like day to day with a narcissist, not just from the words of a therapist or a psychologist, but from somebody who has lived it and been on the inside, just to show what it really looks like, what really is narcissism on the daily.
Mhm.
And so that's what I was trying to show in this memoir. I start during our dating years, our dating, when we started dating, when we met, all the way through our divorce. And I really kind of show the progression. It's just a chronological series of short stories, really, just kind of showing what that day to day looks like. And hopefully, it helps other people out there who are in these same kind of situations to understand that this is toxic and this is not right. It's not okay. And that you absolutely can get out. You can leave and find a better life.
I love that. So what was the process of writing Bridemaid like emotionally for you? Were there pieces of it that were like almost impossible to get out of your body and to put on paper?
Yeah, I mean, some of it was really hard. It's sort of in my mind, I felt it was a little bit embarrassing. I mean, you have to be very
Yeah.
vulnerable, and the whole time I'm writing this, I'm thinking, I don't want people I know to read this. I
Mm.
mean, that's all I could think. I would be so embarrassed, for people to know that I lived like this, that I put up with this. I really had to put that out of my mind now and say, but what about the people who are living in this situation right now who need to understand, you know? And so I had to sort of put that embarrassment and shame aside and and write these stories. And yeah, some of them were hard. I mean, I think I felt more embarrassment than anything else. Just embarrassing that I have to admit that I lived through some of this stuff, that I allowed it. It was hard.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, so I want to talk about the title, Bridemaid. It's so striking. So, what does it mean, and what were you trying to say with it?
I think really it's a play on words, obviously, and it really is kind of accurate. I mean, I was a bride who was made into what he wanted. I was basically gave up myself and had to become who he wanted, and so that's sort of where the title comes in. Made as in MADE, not MAID.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that. And I know that you had shared that you actually wrote a second book, right? A follow-up to Bridemaid. So tell us a little bit about that book.
Yeah, so that one, so I wanted to preserve the word made, because I thought that was an important word in the title, being that I was made into his bride. And so I kept the word made, and the title of my new book is called I've Made Plans. And it is a memoir of my healing journey. It's called I've Made Plans, a memoir of rebuilding. And it just goes through, basically it picks up where my last book left off at my divorce, and goes through my whole healing journey of trying to figure out, trying to build this new life from nothing really. And it was fun to write.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Okay, if someone's listening right now and they're in a relationship that feels a lot like what we've been talking about and what you've described, but they're not sure if it's quote unquote bad enough to leave, what do you want them to know?
Well, I think first of all, if you are asking those questions, it probably is bad enough.
Hmm.
You know, if you have to ask yourself that, that's a red flag. And I would encourage those people to do some reading, do some research, look at narcissism, look at that DSM, look at the category, the traits, because this is serious stuff. And if you are really finding yourself sitting up late at night Googling this stuff like I was, there's a reason. There's a reason that you're doing that. And it's probably because, what you're involved in is toxic. So definitely, I mean, get the information and know that it is never too late to leave and to start over again.
It never is. I mean, I thought, man, 10 years, that's a long time, but and then I'm sure for you, 29 years, that's a
It's a
long
long
time,
time.
but it's never, ever, ever too late to break free and to create the life that you deserve. So,
That's right.
absolutely. Tell me a little bit about what's your outlook now on love and relationships? Is that even something that you're like, "Oh, I haven't even thought twice about getting into, exploring a relationship?" I would love to know about that.
I think I'm very hesitant. I really like where I am right now. And I think that, I've sort of created this life that I really love. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have plans. I'm just I still kind of take things one day at a time. I'm still, even though I've been out of this relationship for, I guess my divorce has been final for just 2 years now, 2.5 years.
Oh, it's so
Um,
fresh still
it's
then.
it's squash, yeah, and so I'm
Oh,
still
yeah.
just kind of living one day at a time and figuring it out, but, I really do love my life today.
I love so much that you're like, "You know what? I have a bigger mission now," like through the pain that you've experienced, you've been able to turn it into such an incredible mission and turning that pain into purpose. And you're like, "Hey, if there's somebody out there for me, cool, but I'm certainly not not searching for it," right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily discount it,
Mhm.
but, I am really happy today.
Yeah, amazing. Where can our listeners find Bridemaid and I've Made Plans, and where can they follow your journey?
Yeah, so both books are on Amazon. They're available in paperback and ebook, and also they're both on Kindle Unlimited. And then I believe Barnes and Noble and Target and places like that online as well. And then I have a website, miajhanks.com, where you can watch podcast interviews, and there's just some various information and also a link to the Amazon page to purchase the books.
Amazing. Okay, and I will put all of those links in the show notes so that listeners can easily find where to get the book and where to learn more about you and follow your journey. But thank you so, so much, Mia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Y'all, I don't even know where to begin after that conversation. Mia, thank you. From the absolute bottom of my heart, thank you for your bravery, your honesty, and for trusting the attachment confessions with your story. What you've been through is something no one should ever have to endure. And the fact that you not only survived it, but you turned it into something that's going to help so many other people, that's nothing short of extraordinary. If today's episode resonated with you, if you found yourself nodding along or feeling things you maybe haven't let yourself feel in a long time, please know that you are not alone. What you experienced is real. What you felt is valid, and you are not the problem. And if you or someone you love is in a situation like Mia's and needs help, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can get out. You don't have to do this alone, and you are worth so much more. Go share this episode with someone who needs it today. You never know what someone is living with behind closed doors. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for the people we love is hand them a story that makes them feel less alone. All right, guys, I know this one weighs a lot. It should. On a bit lighter note, I can't believe I'm saying this, but our next episode is the official 1 year anniversary of the Attachment Confessions. How in the world has 1 year of this podcast flown by? It's been such a privilege sharing my journey with you guys and hearing so many of y'all's stories as well. I truly can't put my gratitude into words. Definitely make sure to join us for our 1 year celebration episode. Everyone's favorite co host, Brent Stokes, will be back for a very special episode. Plus, I have some special announcements, so you will not want to miss it. Until then, remember, you guys, healing your attachment is a choice. So just freaking choose it. Love you guys. Bye.